Star blessings and Venus blessings. I just want to talk a little bit about a planetary aspect that's coming up, which is transiting Mars in Virgo, making an opposition to Neptune. I think it's a really interesting aspect because it's probably one of the more difficult aspects that can occur in our own natal chart as our natal signature, and certainly as a occurring transit as Mars, transits and tracks the whole zodiac basically every couple of years. And depending on where, the outer planets are, Mars will catch up with them in a cycle that will unfold through various aspects. And it's very similar to tracking the moon cycle, for example. When we have a new moon, it's a sun-moon conjunction. And then, as the moon, which is the fastest moving body out of the sun and the moon, continues to move, it forms various aspects, which in turn become the 8 lunation phases. And those phases describe different experiences or portals relative to where we are within a lunation cycle, at least. So that concept of those 8 phases can be applied to any 2 planets, because they too are forming a particular relationship, aspect, cycle, and phases as they transit through the zodiac. So with Mars, transiting Mars in Virgo at the moment, coming up to forming an opposition to Neptune, that's the halfway point, which is like the full moon, for instance, right? So that cycle had to have begun somewhere, and it did. It began in May of 2022, where Mars was in Pisces, and it formed a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. So that conjunction that occurred in May of 2022, we are literally at that halfway point at the moment relative to this cycle between Mars and Neptune, where they are at the moment. Before I talk a little bit about some themes that we can consider about that, I just wanted to say that I've been giving a little bit of thought, especially the last few days, just around the different energies that are quite palpable at the moment in lots of different ways. And some of the questions that I had in my own mind, and I often think about this actually, because, I'm looking at people's charts a lot, whether that's famous people or whomever, looking at, what's happening in people's lives, what transits do they have at the moment, what have they just been through, what's there presently, what are they sort of stepping into, and so forth. And one of the things that I like to really think about is, why do some transits appear to have a greater impact on certain people and not so much of an impact on other people? I don't think that question is a very, very easy to answer, and it's not a black and white type of answer either, because life is not black and white. But fundamentally, though, I think it comes down to a few different things in my thinking, from my perspective at least. And that is that, first and foremost, it always comes back to the soul itself. Each soul that is incarnate in this physical form, who is going through the soul's own personal evolutionary pathway and journey. One thing I think that is always important to remember is that the birth chart itself has so many layers intertwined. It's this incredible tapestry, as is the sky, in terms of all the constellations and the stars and the planets and so forth. There's a infinite sort of tapestry unfolding at any given moment, with different cycles, different archetypes representing different things, and so forth. Our chart is not static. Our chart is alive, as long as we are alive and breathing in this physical body. However, the the tapestry, the patterns in your chart, I would say that everything in your chart is not activated 24/7. It's a little bit like because there's so many layers of so many different things there are there are patterns upon patterns upon patterns of lots of different nuances and energies and potentialities that seem to be activated or triggered at different times in life. So, for example, with this Mars-Neptune transit, it will come and it will go, just like everything does. And for some people, it might be a really important transit. For better or for worse, it might just be a really important experience in a person's life. And for some other people, it will just come and go, maybe even completely unnoticed. And the question is, why does that happen? And I think that's an important question to address and to reflect on and to speak to, because there's such an overload of information continuously circulating through, particularly because of the age of technology that we live in that everyone who's got something to say about I'm just going to speak to astrology for now, and the astrological community, and anybody who's interested in astrology that, dabbles in it or dives deeply into it or is just interested in it, whatever it is, there's so much information, right? It's an overload of information. I wrote a little comment the other day on Facebook and said, there's just far too much Gemini and not enough Sag energy. And what I really meant by that was it wasn't actually a personal dig or a put down at the archetypal expression of Gemini, because every archetype is completely beautiful and completely perfect. And on the other hand, every archetype also has its shadow components. Now, shadow can mean different things to different people, so I'll use another word. Every archetype has its unevolved components that require more consciousness and awareness and work. And so every archetype has aspects of it in its purest form that would manifest in a really beautiful and powerful manner. And then on the other hand, it will also have those same characteristics can also be expressed or projected or manifested in ways that appear to be imbalanced or over the top or just completely unconscious, right? So, Gemini at its purest level is just sheer brilliance from the point of view of speech, logos, mind, intelligence, books, reading, articulation, the spoken word, the vastness of its capacity to grasp, a myriad of ideas, to connect all the dots and so on and so forth, which is ruled by Mercury, of course. And, Mercury, it's quite a fast-moving planet. And the most attention Mercury seems to get is when it's about to station retrograde, which in fact it is. On the 23rd of August, it stations retrograde in Virgo, and I'll touch on that a little bit relative to this Mars-Neptune opposition. But Mercury, Hermes, is a very, very powerful planet. Look, all the planets are powerful, within their own right. But even Mercury, Hermes, Gemini, Virgo, the other sign ruled by Mercury, these archetypes at their purest form are just magical, in terms of what they are capable of expressing and producing. So at best, and idealistically, I suppose, every archetype is fantastic, really. But that comment that I made about far too much Gemini and not enough Sagittarius really what I was suggesting was that in this day and age, with the way the world has, where it has arrived relative to an insatiable desire for information, let's say, amongst many other things as well, there's just this overload, right, of information that in a lot of ways doesn't really have any meaning. It's just information for the sake of information. And it's just an opinion or a personal opinion and so on and so forth, which is Gemini. And the meaning part, to have meaning into something that you are inquiring about, reading about, investigating, exploring, having an embodied experience with anything that gives you meaning in life, whether it's within or whether it's externally, is completely and utterly connected to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is that archetype that brings that broader, bigger picture, philosophical perspective that brings meaning to any situation. And so that's really all I was meaning when I was talking about there's just way too much Gemini overload happening on the world, because there is, and we're all aware of that, especially when you are on social media, which I am because I like to talk about astrology. Unfortunately, you know, a big aspect or a big portion of social media is just this, you know, insatiable verbal desire for everybody to have to say something about something, or have to say something about everything. And it doesn't matter if it's true, and it doesn't matter if it means something, it doesn't matter if it's useful, I'm just going to say it anyway, kind of thing, right? And it actually is, it becomes very, very draining, because from that perspective of Gemini operating in that way, it takes us further and further from our heart center, and takes us much more into the cerebral mental sphere, which when we sort of check in with that and we keep it balanced, it's fine. Everything that's balanced, let's say, that we are working to have that balance in our life, for the most part, operates quite well. It's when things get out of balance that, you know, things get a little bit messy, let's say. And so with this continuous flux of, you know, vacuum and insatiable desire for all these opinions and information to be put out, my question is always, is it true? What does it mean? Does it have meaning? And is it useful? What's the purpose of this statement? What's the purpose of doing this video and talking about this? What's the motivation behind that, right? And these are important questions in lots of ways. They're important questions, even with this Mars-Neptune opposition, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And just circling right back now to where I started with, why do certain transits impact certain people and don't really seem to impact other people at all? And again, I'll say that it really does come back to the soul, its evolutionary unfoldment, where it is at any given moment, what the soul is receptive to, conscious of, and also ready to experience or embody or confront or accept or work through, or whatever it is. Not every single transit is going to impact every single person every single day. It's just not how it works. And so this insatiable need to communicate every single little detail of everything that's going on, as though it's absolutely in no uncertain terms what everyone's going to experience, I don't think is an authentic or correct assumption. So whilst it's useful to be aware of the various transits and movements and phenomena of the stars and the planets and so on and so forth, we can get really sort of carried away and get really lost in a sea of information that, instead of it bringing us awareness and consciousness, it creates this it creates a sense of feeling unsettled or perhaps even anxious, because you're reading this, you're looking at that, you're reading that, you're looking at that, and you're trying to relate it to your personal circumstances, and you're sort of trying to make it fit into your life story, as it were. But the fact is, not everything influences everyone all the time. And this is a subject that I will be covering when I do my class on, I'm doing a whole section there on the personality and the soul, the alignment of the personality and the soul as viewed through evolutionary astrology and also esoteric astrology. So I've got a big chunk of ideas, teachings, and information that I've brought together in one particular class, and it addresses these sorts of questions, because the fact is that every soul is at a different state of awareness, consciousness, and evolution. That is, in terms of how their chart is operating, what is activated at any given moment, and what they are aware of or not aware of. And the other component to this, of course, is that 80% or more of our behavior is motivated and derived from the unconscious components of our psyche. So whilst we may think that we've got this tremendous level of control over everything that happens, there's a large component to our existence that has a direct link to the unconscious drives and motivations. Knowledge is power. There's really no two ways about that. I completely agree with that. But there is also the soul's desires and intentions in its evolutionary pathway. And whilst having knowledge is powerful, and it is certainly a better position to be in than to be completely ignorant, unaware, and not have knowledge into a particular field, area, subject, whatever it may be. Because when we have knowledge, we are obviously equipped to make an informed decision, perhaps, on whatever it is we need to decide on, right? But there is this thing called fate and destiny. There is this thing called soul. There is this component to our existence that decides from levels that are not part of our everyday thinking and conscious mind. As we think, we do decide everything on that level. So that too can be woven into the question of, why do some transits impact us so significantly, and why do they not impact other people at all? The soul is awake all the time, and it is ready to receive and to pursue, I suppose, what it's seeking to work through and evolve through at any given moment. And think about that, right? Because your chart has so many different layers to it, even just from your natal chart perspective. Think about the concept of harmonics. You can look at so many different harmonic charts, which show you a picture of an energy pattern of your chart that otherwise is not seen in the ordinary chart that you look at. That's what harmonic charts do. It's like a little microscope that dives right in, and it zooms into a particular pattern and creates a chart for that pattern. And there's so many of those that you could look at relative to your birth chart, for instance. So there are a lot of things in our birth chart that appear to be lying dormant and will be activated at different times. Somebody might have a Pluto transit going over their midheaven, and that may correspond to the person that their whole life from that external and internal level goes through the most unbelievable metamorphosis, and in a very drastic and severe case that could leave a person completely destitute, right? Because the 10th and 4th house is our inner life and external life. So that could be a person who, you know, loses their job, loses their career, becomes retrenched, loses their home. You know, I mean, that's a very severe level of Pluto moving through the 10th. That's at the extreme end. And another person might have Pluto going over their midheaven, opposing the IC, the home, inner security, and they may just find themselves experiencing a level of metamorphosis or transformation, but in a way that they are just evolving further to what they've already been working on or working through. Just to put it very, very simply, I'm just trying to demonstrate and outline that whilst a transit in a particular house and sign has its inherent characteristics and themes, not everyone is going to experience everything in the same way. So Mars-Neptune is a very, very tricky transit or aspect. Let me just bring up this chart and we can take a look at it together. So there it is, at the 23rd of August. That's for the Southern Hemisphere. You can see Mars is 2659, Neptune is 2659 as well. So on this particular day, transiting Mars has reached its opposition to Neptune. And here we have Mercury at 21 degrees of Virgo, stationary, that's what the S stands for. Stationary retrograde, basically, because Mercury goes retrograde in the Earth Trinity of this year, right? So this is the second one for this year. And Mercury in Virgo, for a start, is a highly dignified position. It's position of rulership, domicile, and exaltation as well. So it holds tremendous dignity here in this position, which is helpful and useful for us relative to mercurial components of our life. I think this is going to be pretty important from the point of view of the opposition to Mars and Neptune, which is a full moon phase. Let's just talk about that first before I include some details about Mercury. First of all, I guess for yourself personally, it would be about looking at where's transiting Neptune in your birth chart. It's been there a long time. Neptune spends about 14 years in one sign. It's a long time to have Neptune in one part of your chart. Could be a long time of confusion on things. So wherever Neptune is in your chart, then Mars is at the exact opposite point. Mars in Virgo is pretty amazing, actually. I like Mars in Virgo. One of my closest friends, and who's also my astrology mentor, he's got Mars in Virgo. So I've seen the operations of Mars in Virgo in, for the most part, a really positive way through this person's life and how his Mars in Virgo operates, for instance. But I mean, Mars in Virgo has neither dignity or debility, but I think Mars in Virgo can be a really interesting placement. The things to consider here is, I think, well, first of all, Pisces and Virgo, they are two of the most complex signs in the wheel. The third one is Scorpio, and I've spoken about this previously. In fact, I've done, I think, 2 videos on this subject, on the complexities of the 3 most complex signs of the zodiac, which is Virgo, Scorpio, and Pisces. So we have two archetypes, a polarity, which are indeed very complex archetypes, and both of them speak to service as well. And here they are in an opposition to each other. Now, Mars corresponds very much to our own personal desires, our personal willpower, how we exercise our willpower towards what we initiate and act upon, our goals, our drive, you know, anything that we want to pretty much get going, as it were. You know, Mars is that drive, that energy, that fuel in the tank, that desire. And I think it's great, actually, that we've got this Virgo energy emphasized here, while we, at this point, we've already, 23rd of August, we've already experienced the Venus star point in Leo, because that happened on the 13th of August, which hasn't happened yet because I'm doing this recording on the 9th of August. And that reminds me, this Friday I'll be meeting with Ariel Gutman, and we will be discussing the Venus morning star in Leo. She'll bring lots of her wonderful insights and perspectives, and I'll bring my own, and I think we're going to do a couple of chart examples, and I'm going to talk about Sinead O'Connor, who, you know, recently transcended, as you are all aware, and that for some reason well, I know the reason, but anyway, that particular event had a huge impact on my heart and soul. And I know it did for millions and millions of people. I'm not saying I'm the only one. I'm just simply expressing that for me, it had a huge impact. You know, I literally just had to withdraw from everything, the whole world. It was a very heavy, painful, actually, experience. So I'll be talking about her. I just want to mention that because, you know, the Venus star point hasn't actually happened yet. We're only just literally a few days away from it. So I'm really looking forward to this new cycle with Venus as well, because we're coming out of the Capricorn cycle, all right, which started in January of 2022 relative to Venus. Her last retrograde cycle was in Capricorn, January of 2022. So every 19 months, we have this cycle of Venus retrograde, right? And then, you know, starting in a new archetype, a new cycle begins, and so forth. And so we're starting a new 8-year cycle, essentially. But look, anyway, Ariel and I will talk about that. So even though I have spoken about it already, I'll just put that aside again for the moment. And then next week, I'm meeting with Roman Kolev, which I'm really looking forward to, really excited about. And he and I will also speak about Venus, and we will speak about the pentagram through his program and what the pentagram shows in his program relative to your birth chart, which is completely different to a Sun-Venus conjunction, Venus star point. I'll leave that subject there for now because, again, he and I will meet next week. It'll be available on my YouTube channel, so you'll all get to view it, and it'll be a really, I think it's going to be a great session, actually. I'm really excited about that. So anyway, leaving the Leo Venus and Venus Leo stuff aside for a moment, this Virgo archetypal energy that we have here with Mercury in Virgo and Mars in Virgo is really, really useful because, I mean, Leo and Virgo, which sit adjacent to each other in the natural zodiac, couldn't be more different from each other in terms of their archetypal expressions. And if someone's got strong Leo in their chart, it's great when they also have Virgo in their chart, if they do, because it really balances out from a personality level at least, the egocentric nature of the archetype of Leo, right? The self-centeredness, let's say, and so forth. So we've got this extraordinary Leo Venus start point activating something quite profound from our heart center. When we go to that heart center level, the Sun Venus conjunction is the cosmic heartbeat. So it is very much about being authentic from our heart with whatever we are participating in or wishing to step into, and so forth. I think authenticity is a big key, because Venus has been picking up that square to Uranus as well, right, in this cycle. And Uranus is always about being authentic and truthful to yourself. And in this case, Leo, it's the heart, right? So, you know, as I said, Leo at that personality level can be that grandeur, egotistical, I'm the center of the universe, I'm so special, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever, right? When that is, completely imbalanced and operating at that pure personality level, it's not the most attractive, actually. It's just quite self-absorbed. So what does Virgo do in that situation? Virgo is the most amazing archetype to bring us back down to earth. It's the archetype that corresponds to being humble. The archetype that corresponds to humility and service. So we have this combination of Neptune, Mars. It is our willpower aligning with spirit, we can say, in two archetypes that correspond to spirit and service. So I guess we could think about, well, it'll be interesting to track where you were, in when was it? May of 2022, which is when Mars was conjunct Neptune. You may have started something at that time. Think about it from a Mars perspective, right? And of course, add in the Neptune component. Now, some of the most 3D level, personality level expressions of Mars-Neptune can be dishonesty, disillusionment, being deceived, or being, totally idealistic with what you are trying to accomplish with your personal desires with Mars. So it depends what was going on in your life at that time, perhaps what you initiated. And also, it depends where that conjunction occurred in your chart. That is, where was Mars-Neptune in Pisces in your chart? So fast forward to August of 23, from May 2022 to August 23, we're at the halfway point of this cycle between Mars and Neptune. And one thing I like to remind people is that the opposition is a classic reflection of a full moon phase, full moon energy. And some people, or many people perhaps, are of the opinion or perspective that during a full moon, you don't start something new. Now, I don't agree with that statement. And here's the reason why, and I have mentioned this before, and it's a logical reason as well. And when you hear it, perhaps you will agree, or at least understand it. The reason that you can start something during a full moon phase is because of the obvious. A full moon phase is an experience of being able to see clearly all around you what's actually come up into fruition, what has manifested. through this cycle. In this case, Mars-Neptune, which the conjunction occurred in May of 2022. So you've come to the halfway point now, which is the point of the full moon phase, which is the point of illumination. And to use simple language, it's the ability to see, right, what fruits have manifested through the actions that you took or initiated. And because you're actually able to see now, because when planets are conjunct, just like the new moon, sun-moon conjunction, that's the seed being planted, right? You can't see a new moon. It's dark, isn't it? So there's a very real potent potentiality of that energy, but we cannot see what's there. We need to wait until the cycle unfolds. We can set our intentions, but we will not see the outcome, the fruits to our labors, as it were, until the cycle unfolds. So at this point of this unfoldment, we're at the halfway point, illumination, full moon, clear seeing. I'm able to see what the heck's going on relative to my initiation or desires or goals or actions from a Mars-Neptune perspective. Now, Mars-Neptune is really about aligning our personal will with the divine will, Neptune, spirit. The opposite side to that coin would be to be using that energy to mask or hide or masquerade or have ulterior sort of motives with your actions and agenda, Mars. Many people will operate in that way. And that's not a judgment, that's just a fact. If we want to think about this more from an esoteric level, a spiritual level, for lack of a better word, from a position of our own willpower aligning with the divine will, then we can utilize this energy to integrate further into addressing and questioning, what are my desires? Why do I have these desires? How aligned are they with divine will, my highest will, and the divine will? Or are these personal desires purely based on my own selfish, egotistical needs and desires, you know, without giving any care, consideration, thought to anybody else? And that's up to each of us to ask that question, to be honest about that question, to address that question, and to work with that if we want to. It's always up to us. We always have free will. Just a comment I'd like to read. This is just a comment about the combination of Mars with Neptune. So the comment is this: spiritual maturity and resolve, a capacity to act without illusions of personal gain, a keen awareness of the consequences of every action in life, concrete service to those less fortunate, a sense of weakness or paralysis, demoralizing lack of confidence, feelings of fear and paranoia, utter burnout and exhaustion, involvement in nasty backstabbing or entanglements. I mean, this guy is so spot on with what he said there. And I'm reading from this book. There it is for those of you who are watching this visually. And the name is The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. This is a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. That little description there is so on point, so succinct and on point, with really rich pointers towards the energy of Mars and Neptune, both in a high level and a more sinister, darker level. So Mars-Neptune energy is very, very complex and not an easy planetary archetypal energy to be conscious of. It's very, very tricky. But we have a real, there's a real gift opening up here with this opposition because of the archetypal energies there with Pisces and Virgo. It's really about checking in with just our daily life, right? How we relate to our daily life, our everything that we do from the moment we get up to the moment we go to sleep, everything that happens in that cycle of our day, our level of commitment, our level of discipline, being organized in the way that we need to for the different projects or different things that we need to be doing. That can be just as simple as being not necessarily single, but being a mother at home and tending to your children, right? If you're a mother, that's a full-time job unto itself. So I take my hat off to mothers who can, have children and have a career as well. I think that's extremely challenging, but so many more women are doing that, right? Of late anyway. That's another story. But the point being that whatever you are doing in your day, there's an element of, are you committed to what you are doing? Are you present with what you are engaging? Are you clear in your mind with what you are doing, why you are doing it? This is the Virgo energy, if you like, the Virgo archetype. Virgo always asks us to improve in our life, really, overall, right? And then we can go into things like health and just our daily routines and so on and so forth. But at an even higher level, it is about our evolutionary growth from the point of view of the way we evolve is by working through things, right? Improving on things so that we don't have to come back and repeat the same lesson again, as it were. So Virgo has that edge to it, that it will bring in that level of humility and humbleness enough to get us to really look at things in a very honest kind of way. I mean, the flip side to that coin, when Virgo is operating from a more unconscious personality level, is the workaholic, for instance, who doesn't stop to even eat, because one of the greatest fears for Virgo is that sense of the existential void. That is that if I'm not doing something, then I'm not being productive, I'm not being useful, I'm kind of worthless, as it were. I need to be doing something. Doesn't matter what it is, I just need to be doing it. And that's where Pisces comes in, the opposite to Virgo, and says, you need to surrender. You need to let go. Sometimes it is about just doing nothing. It is about, giving over that need or desire to want to control everything, which is more the shadow side of Virgo, you could say. So this is very complex, and I could talk about this for hours, but I better round it up because I've got a few things to get to. This opposition here, I think, can really highlight to us where we are with our personal orientation, with our desires and our goals, and how we can become perhaps more humble and bring in a greater sense of humility within our actions and why we are doing what we are doing, as opposed to having ulterior motives and being deceptive or dishonest towards others or things like that. Just going back to, because I didn't actually answer what I wanted to answer to, well, not an answer, but a point that I was trying to make is that the reason you can start something new during a full moon phase or a full phase part of the cycle of 2 planets is because of the fact that you can see what's there, whether whether it's good or bad, just to use simple language, whether it's something that satisfies you or not, whether it's something you like or don't like, that's the point of illumination. It shows you. It's not the illumination doesn't show you just all the beautiful things. It shows you everything, which is fantastic, because then you're not blindsided and you're not looking through a tunnel vision perspective. When you're able to see everything, you're able to make more informed decisions. You're able to see things broadly, right? And Mars in Virgo can do that really, really well. It can really help us get back to down to earth, down to being human and having humility and being humble about what we are doing, as opposed to, you know, the grandiose Leo energy that comes before Virgo, which can be, you know, just an inflated sense of importance, inflated ego and so forth, right? So Virgo and Pisces, archetypes to do with service, spirit, surrender, trust, but doing the work. Mars in Virgo is doing the work. And the other part of it is doing the work and trusting the divine will, or the bigger picture, because we have this tendency as humans to we want to see results quickly, right? We're doing XYZ and things are not happening fast enough. The fruits are not appearing fast enough. We get very impatient. Then we start to worry, we start to panic. Why isn't this working? Why isn't it happening? Why am I not getting more of a response? Why? Don't worry about the whys. That's what Mars in Virgo can teach us here with this opposition to Neptune, and just checking in with being clear and realistic and honest with our desires and motivations and intentions. And what you see, going back to that thing about you can start something new during a full moon phase, or a full phase between two planets, because of what you are seeing. As I said, whether you like it, whether you don't, whether it's shit, whether it's great, doesn't really matter. It matters, though, that you can see everything. And because of what you can see, you make a particular decision, right? You either make a decision to continue with what's there, nurture it more, develop it more, or you make a decision to cut your losses and let it go. Or you make a decision in a different way, because you can see that the route that you took produced these particular results, and it's not working for you. It doesn't feel useful to continue in that particular way. So you make a different choice. You take something out, you put something new in, whatever it is, right? This is why we can start something new during a full moon phase. Okay, so, and I think Mercury turning stationary retrograde here will most certainly be taking, in his retrograde journey, he will be taking this this energy of Mars-Neptune with him. And as I said, Mercury is very dignified in the archetype of Virgo. Now, we know what Mercury retrograde generally means. It can be tricky sometimes. It's not as disastrous as all the hype generally around it is projected onto it. You know, there can be some, confused communication, some technological challenges here and there and whatnot, but big deal, you know, that just happens every day in life, everywhere. I think the deeper, more meaningful component to Mercury retrograde would be to, you know, just going in within that inward journey of your own mind. And Virgo it's a mutable sign, it's an earth sign, it's a feminine sign. So it's a feminine archetypal quality, that feminine component of our mind, if you like, where we are reassessing things from the point of view of the lens of Virgo, and how and why things are working or not working. And part of that story for Mercury will be the Mars-Neptune opposition, because Mercury is right there with Mars and therefore opposite Neptune as well. So Mercury's retrograde journey will hold the tapestry of the energy between this opposition of Mars and Neptune. Just something to consider, perhaps. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm just going to say, hope you're all doing well. Where are we? Let me think. We just had the Lion's Gate. I've seen a lot of personal opinions and a lot of hoopla about the Lion's Gate. And one thing I will say is that some astrologers have spoken to the fact that that alignment, it's a bit tricky because the alignment doesn't actually occur on the 8th of the 8th for everyone. And that is true. Very much like Venus retrograde forming a conjunction to the Sun on the 13th of August, being reborn as the morning star in Melbourne, Australia. Venus actually doesn't disappear in the month of August. That's an astronomical phenomenon, and that's based on latitude, basically. It's based on her position relative to the ecliptic and how her distance to the ecliptic, which is the Sun's pathway. So the Lion's Gate hoopla, which is getting a lot of bad press in some ways, and then there's a whole level of hype attached to it as well. I wrote something about it this morning. Whether you believe it or whether you don't, or whether it's something that you follow, or whether it's something you work with, I don't think it really matters in one way. What does matter is, coming back to the question, why am I wanting to align with this particular thing or that particular thing? I feel that if we are trying to align with something, why is that? Why am I wanting to align with that? What's the result that I'm looking for? I mean, from the point of view of the number 8 corresponds to Scorpio. And it is a lion, which is a very powerful animal. I mean, the fixed star Regulus, although it's moved on, to Virgo, it still holds that space in the energy of Leo, in a certain way, of course. And, you know, the lion is one of Inanna's animals, the goddess Ishtar, Inanna, which is Venus, which is the morning star. So whether we believe the 8-8 lion's portal gate has authentic history and roots as to where it's derived from and so forth, there are loads of different opinions and perspectives on that. And, you know, a lot of people said that, oh, I didn't feel anything. Oh, in fact, it felt awful. I was having nightmares all night. And that's fair enough, because having an 8-8 day, as it were, is not going to change your freaking life. It's not going to change the world. We have it every year. The question is, why are we focused on it? What's the purpose of it? And if the answer is that in some broad way, that I'm sort of focused on that because I feel an attraction to the Leo archetype, the lion, the number 8, which is about transformation, the star Sirius, which is said to be our spiritual sun, which has, you know, tremendous ancient history going back to infinity, you know, which connects to Egypt and the pyramids and so forth, and you have some correspondence, connection, alignment with that vibration, then that's fine. Why can't you pay attention to that portal of energy? I mean, from an astronomical, technical perspective, that alignment won't occur for everyone on the 8th of the 8th. For a lot of the Earth, actually, it doesn't occur on the 8th of the 8th, as far as I understand. But that energy is supposed to be open from, you know, July sometime till, I don't know, late August sometime. So it's a window, and it's a process, and it's a journey. And it's said that, you know, the 8th of the 8th is the strongest date, and that may be for some people and it may not be for others. I don't think it really matters. I think it comes down to what I said. It's not going to change your life, most likely, and it's not going to change the world. But is there something happening at some level that maybe we don't even understand consciously, or that we can't bring down to that material proof scientific kind of level? Yeah, I'd say, yeah, you know. So yeah, it just comes back to what feels authentic for you, you know. I've never been into the hype of the Lion's Gate, and there has been a lot of hype around it for a long time. And but anything can get hype, you know. Look at mainstream astrology. Look at the hype that gets. Look at some of the YouTube channels where I know that there's many of people who have a YouTube channel that are not astrologers at all. And they create this hype around a particular eclipse or around a particular full moon. And the hype is just delusional, because what they're actually promising that this particular transit or whatever it is going to bring very rarely does for most people. So there's hype everywhere. And I think with anything, we've just got to come back to our own personal alignment. What feels authentic? What feels authentic? That's probably the best way to say it. What really feels authentic? What feels like you are tuning in more and more and more to your soul's path, your soul's intentions, your soul's desires, and the divine source creation to all things. At the end of the day, doesn't matter how you get there, that is the number one path, the number one relationship that we need to tend to, I feel and believe. So I'll see you guys this Friday. I'll be meeting with Ariel, which is Venus Day. And that's 2 days away. So yeah, okay, I'll see you guys soon. Let me know of your thoughts about, you know, this Lion's business. If you relate to it, if you relate to the comments that it's utter crap. Some people say it's utter bullshit. And I'm not here to say that it's utter bullshit or that it's gospel. I'm just here to say that as long as we are being true and authentic from a heart-centered place and working towards our own personal alignment, however that gets us there, so be it. See you guys soon. Thanks for listening. And also, don't forget to email me for my classes. They're actually starting on the 25th of August. I'm really excited about that. It's a long time coming, and it's just going to be amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Email me if you're interested. Thanks for those that have. I'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.